Today is January 14th, 2014, and I'm here with one of Winnipeg's preeminent artists and well-known Canadian sculptors, Eva Stubbs, RCA. Eva was born in Budapest, Hungary, and came to Canada as a refugee with her parents in 1944. She has had exhibitions across the country, including the Art Gallery of Ontario, where she was part of the Sculpture Society of Canada's exhibition, the Montreal Museum of Fine Arts, and most recently, a retrospective of her work was held at the Winnipeg Art Gallery from December 2010 to March 2011. Welcome, Eva.
Pardon me?
Welcome. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this interview. With such a long and illustrious career, there is so much to talk about, but if I may, I would like to focus in on your student days at the University of Manitoba School of Art. And you attended there between 1953 and 1957. Could you talk a bit about your student days and how this was important to your artistic career?
It takes a lot of talking. I don't know what you want to hear.
Well, I only have, I don't want too much because we're going to focus on the actual sculpture portrait that you did of Justice Samuel Friedman. But in total, perhaps it'd be, a 10-minute video, right? So, I mean, you studied, you talked a bit about Cecil Richards.
Yes.
He was your sculpture professor?
Yeah, he was the sculpture professor. And I can thank him for what I am today because he was so giving and helpful and encouraging, especially encouraging. I didn't realize at the time that I was in a man's domain because women were not supposed to be sculptors and there were very few in the city, but I was too ignorant to know any of this.
Mm-hmm.
So I just perceived, and he was very encouraging.
And with him, did you learn about bronze casting? And was there a foundry on campus, or where did you?
No. There was nothing on campus, basically. There were salt blocks, which the students carved. I didn't never carved a salt block, but I carved some wood. And clay and plaster, and that's about it.
Oh.
I think the students today should really appreciate what they've got. And, it's like sculpture heaven.
Yeah.
But, no, it was very, very basic, but we had a lot of professors from the States, because the United States was way ahead of us in their art production and art appreciation. So they brought some interesting ideas with them, and that was good. The physical part of the School of Art was really, really old and shabby and strange. And the sculpture department was on the top floor, which is now the new Lockhorts building. And you had to lug all the powdered clay up there and the plaster up there, no elevator, and make your own clay into usable clay from the powder clay, which is a hell of a lot of job that's a lot of work.
I hope there were good elevators.
Pardon me?
I hope there were good elevators.
There was no elevator.
Oh.
There was nothing.
So you had to take the stairs with all of that.
Yes, in the attic.
Yeah.
The sculpture and ceramic department was on the third floor. It was sort of like the attic. And what can I say? Richard Williams was the director in those days. He came from the States too. And he used to teach us art history. That was the last class of the day. And I still remember lying down on the table falling asleep because it was hot and I was tired and it was boring. But anyway, it's a sad situation. It was a sad situation, but I think we still had some pretty good spirit and some good ideas, because I mean, being an art student, has a lot to do with what you think. And I think a lot of that is now, from some of the things I notice, missing. They just sort of look at the work and not. We had wonderful discussions, and we could say all the things we didn't like or liked and why, and it was great in that sense. But other than that, it was pretty awful. That's all I can say.
Yeah, you had some interesting classmates. Ivan Eyre, Winston Leathers
Oh, yes.
were contemporaries of you.
Yes.
There, yeah, Jack Schurz was there at the same time.
Yes,
Yeah,
Jack Schurz.
yeah, and all of these students have gone on to become very important artists as well.
Yes,
So it-
they were.
Yeah.
They always forgot to mention me. It was the big five, and they were good, but you know, I always felt like little old me that, you know, also ran kind of for many years.
Mhm.
And I just had a letter from Marilyn Baker. I don't know if you knew her.
I know Marilyn Baker, yes.
Well, we were sort of friends, and we had lots of talks, and now she's in Chicago, and she wrote me a letter and says, I don't know how you ever made it, Eva, because you certainly were not supported by all these guys.
No, it's been very difficult. Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So it was a different time, very different time.
And what's interesting now is there's almost more female students than male students. So
Isn't that
it's
interesting?
it's the reverse right now, at least from what I've seen the last, you know,
That's
maybe
amazing.
decade.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, yeah. So the portrait sculpture that we have at the Faculty of Law, the bust of Justice Samuel Friedman.
It's also at the park.
Yes, I found that out by looking at Facebook. It's at the Assiniboine Park.
Yes.
And you did a bust there later on, I think it was from 1987.
No, actually the same bus.
It's the same one?
It's the same piece that was sent to the foundry, and they did a second copy of it.
Okay, because the date in the catalog is 1987 on the one at Assiniboine Park. So that's because of when it was,
Yes.
yes, done at the foundry. Okay.
Well, yeah, I can't remember dates, so I.
Yeah, no, that's okay, because this one I
It's the
think,
same thing.
yeah, okay, because I think this one is probably earlier, but maybe not that far earlier.
A
Yeah.
little earlier, when I did Sam, I didn't have a studio. I still have my studio at home in the basement,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't have a studio at the time, so I know it's much earlier.
And so how did this project come about? Did you decide to just do him, or did he approach you? No?
My husband was a lawyer, a secretary of the Law Society, and I knew all the lawyers and I knew all the judges, and I guess one day I just said, Sam, would you like to sit for me?
Yeah.
And he said, oh yes. He
Oh,
was thrilled to sit for me.
Yeah.
So that's how it happened.
oh, exciting. So he would come to your apartment, and would you, could you talk a bit about the process? Would you sketch him first, or did you do kind of a rough model in
I
clay?
don't sketch
You
from
don't?
my work.
Okay.
Well, we lived in a house, and I had a studio in the basement. Do you remember that, Barb? When I still had my studio in my basement?
No, I knew you
No,
after that.
After that. So he came, he was thrilled to be done, you know, he felt very flattered, of course, and so he sat down. I have sort of a podium where it raises the sitter a little bit off the floor, and he said about Eva, I had this operation on, I think it was his left side, and it was sort of an indentation, like you could tell that it was different from the rest of his face. So I would like you to do me on this side, not on this side. And I said, Sam, this is sculpture. We work in the round,
Yes.
but I'm not into operations, so, you know, I'll fake it. It's okay. So then he relaxed.
Yeah.
and enjoyed the whole process.
Oh, that's wonderful.
He was a nice man.
Yeah.
Very nice. Great sense of humor.
Yeah.
It's,
And so how long would this have taken you, this project, to do a bust?
well, it depends how it goes.
Yeah.
Anything from about 6, 7 to 8 or 10 sittings.
Mm-hmm.
Each time it's maybe an hour and a half or 2 hours. I don't like them to fall asleep on me, so can't push it too long.
Yeah, yeah.
And then the process then that I didn't do the rest of it. Somebody took a plaster cast of it, and that plaster cast went to the foundry, and that's a long process. I don't know
Yes.
if you want me to go with that.
Yes, I think
Pretty
it'd be
boring.
interesting for the students, perhaps, if you do just go into a bit more detail.
Is it hot in here, just me? It's a very lengthy process. There's different ways of doing it, but I don't do any of this.
No.
This is all done. at
It's
the
very
foundry.
technical, yeah. Yeah.
They pour hot melted wax into the plaster cast, which is hard,
Yeah.
and then they take the wax out.
It's the lost wax
First, I'm
process,
sorry,
right? Yeah.
I'm ahead of myself.
Yeah.
First they do a rubber mold,
Yeah.
and then they do the wax, and the rubber just kind of peels off the wax. And then they take the wax and dip it in a slurry, really big wads of slurry, which is, I don't know exactly the measurements, but it's sort of very, very fine sand, and I think it's plaster. I'm not sure what the components are. And they dip it in this slurry, and then they hang it up to dry, and they dip it several times so it has a thick layer of this slurry, which is sort of like another plaster cast, but not
Yeah.
quite plaster. And then they take that and put it together, and then they put it in the kiln, which is like an oven,
Mm-hmm.
and all the wax comes out.
Mm-hmm.
So then they have a negative space of the head,
Yeah.
and then they put the molten metal in this and slur it around so it's not solid, and at the end they just throw it into some cold water, and all this stuff comes off, and you're left with the bronze. And then they have to clean it up, and there's some sprueing that has to be cut off, which I forgot to mention earlier. And then they have to finish all the things that were cut off, they have to finish it to look like it never happened.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And if there's any other things that they have to take off, they do, and there's quite a job of finishing.
Yeah, it's a big process.
It's a huge,
Yeah.
huge amount of work, and then the patina comes last, because once it's all finished, the bronze itself is just yellow, just like brass, and then the patina is putting what do you call it?
Chemical?
Chemicals.
Yeah.
With I don't remember. Hot.
Like a propane
Flame.
torch, a
Yeah,
torch.
propane
Yes,
torch,
that's
yeah.
right. Mm-hmm.
And then they paint it and propane torch it, and they keep working back and forth, and that's the color.
Yeah, and do you at that point, I don't know if you were at the foundry, I'm not sure where the foundry was, but then do they ask for your input if the patina is what you want?
Well, every
Or-
time,
yeah.
especially for many years at the beginning, I went to the foundry when they worked for me, and I would work under wax.
Mm-hmm.
That's when you see what you should or shouldn't do, and you can change things. And after that, I don't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
It's all up to and all these people are trained to do what they're doing. It's very, very specialized
Oh, yeah.
and incredibly, what do you call it?
Well, very skilled
Work-
craftsmen or artisans.
Labor intensive.
Labor
Yeah,
intensive.
yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you.
Yeah.
And people think it's very expensive because of the bronze itself. It's not. It's very expensive because lots of people work on it and different parts of the process, and they're all totally experienced.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of work.
And every part is very important, and it has to be done well for the
It has
whole
to be
to
done.
work. Yeah.
And before I went to ArtCast, which is in Georgetown, I sent, I don't know, I can't know, you know what? Sam's portrait was done in the States, in New York, which doesn't exist anymore. I think they went belly up.
Oh, okay.
Because at that time there was no foundry in Canada for fine art.
Yeah.
You know, there's lots of foundries, but not for art.
I know that there weren't because the Night and Day sculpture by Cecil Richards, he did it in Norway. He had
That's
it
right.
cast in Norway. I was
Yeah.
researching that. And I found that interesting. Yeah, because I'm going there this summer. But yeah,
And
Yeah.
it's interesting because there's a little dimple here, which was pulled over by the operation, and I remember vaguely now that you talk about it. The foundry phoned me and said, because I didn't go to the foundry that time, and said, well, there's this that showed me what it is, that I have to cover it.
Oh.
I said, no, don't do that. Because he did have a dimple, but it was pulled over.
Oh.
Artistic license.
It was pulled over and I didn't want it to be covered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. And then I also read that the law students, before their exams, will go and rub his nose for
Yes.
good luck.
Yes.
Have you heard that? Yes. So I have to go and look at his nose to see.
Yes, I heard that. I've never seen it because I've never been there after I saw it once. And it's all yellow because they rubbed the nose
Yeah.
and they ended up taking the patina off. And I hope they brought them good luck.
Yeah, I hope so too. Yeah, well, thank you very much, Eva.
Oh,
This
you're
was
very
wonderful.
welcome.